The prototype shattered across the conference table before I could even finish my sentence. Trent's hand had slipped during my presentation, sending 6 months of work crashing into pieces. The Green Earth executives stared at the wreckage. My boss crossed his arms. Trent shook his head slowly like he was disappointed in me. "This is exactly what I was worried about," Trent said, his voice dripping with fake concern. "Grace's designs look good on paper, but they're not realistic for actual production. Too fragile. Too expensive." The room went silent. I felt my face burning as I knelt down to gather the broken pieces of biodegradable packaging material I'd spent countless nights perfecting. My hands shook as I picked up fragments of what was supposed to be my big breakthrough at Viridian Industries. "I'm so sorry," I whispered, though I wasn't sure why I was apologizing. This wasn't my fault. The Green Earth team started packing their briefcases. The meeting was clearly over. My career at Viridian felt like it was ending too. Nobody met my eyes as they filed toward the door. I was still on my knees collecting the last pieces when I noticed a hand extended toward me. It belonged to one of the Green Earth executives, a man in his 50s with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Here," he said quietly, helping me gather the fragments. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and pressed it into my palm. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Call me." I looked down at the card. Elliot Barnes, Senior Vice President of Innovation, Green Earth Solutions. My heart hammered in my chest as I met his gaze. There was something in his expression that I couldn't quite read. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. He nodded once, then straightened his tie and walked out with his team. I stood there clutching his card and the broken pieces of my prototype, trying to make sense of what just happened. Around me, my co-workers were already whispering. Trent clapped me on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Grace. We'll get them next time. Maybe with something more practical." The HR office smelled like air freshener and disappointment. I sat across from Patricia Cole, our head of human resources, still holding the box containing my broken prototype. I'd come straight here after the meeting, hoping someone would listen to what really happened. "So you're saying Trent deliberately destroyed your work?" Patricia asked, her pen hovering over a notepad. "Yes." He reached across the table and knocked it off. "I saw him do it." Patricia sighed. "Grace, I've reviewed the incident with several witnesses. Everyone agrees it was an accident. Presentation mishap. These things happen when you're nervous." I wasn't nervous. I was mid-sentence when Trent has been with Viridian for 8 years. He's a senior engineer with an excellent track record. Are you really suggesting he would sabotage a colleague in front of clients? The way she said it made me feel small and paranoid. I looked down at my hands, still dusty from the prototype fragments. "I just think someone should look into it," I said quietly. Patricia closed her notepad. "I'll mark this as resolved. Let's move forward professionally, shall we?" I walked out knowing I was completely alone. By Tuesday morning, everyone at Viridian knew about the presentation disaster. That's what they were calling it. My disaster. Not sabotage. Not workplace bullying. Just Grace having a meltdown in front of important clients. I walked through the engineering floor toward my desk, and conversations stopped. People suddenly became very interested in their computer screens. Jenna, who usually ate lunch with me, pretended not to see me when I passed her cubicle. The break room was worse. When I walked in to refill my coffee, 3 co-workers literally walked out. Like I was contagious. Like failure could spread through proximity. Trent was holding court by the water cooler, surrounded by junior engineers. "The problem with some designers," he said loud enough for me to hear, "is they care more about being trendy than about what actually works." I tried to warn the team, but nobody wanted to hurt anyone's feelings. He glanced at me with a sad smile, like he was genuinely sorry for me. Several people nodded in agreement. I poured my coffee with shaking hands and walked back to my desk. That's when I saw it. A memo on my desk announcing that Trent would be temporarily overseeing my projects until further notice. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment over and over. But my mind kept drifting further back, to when this all started. To the beginning. I remembered the first night I'd sketched the prototype design. It was almost a year ago, sitting at my kitchen table at 2 in the morning with cold coffee and graph paper. The idea had come to me suddenly. A biodegradable packaging solution that was actually cheaper to produce than traditional materials. I'd spent 3 months researching, testing materials in my garage, building sample after sample. The breakthrough came on a rainy Tuesday when I finally got the compression ratio right. The material was strong, flexible, and completely compostable within 60 days. I'd been so excited when I presented the early sketches to the engineering team. Trent had seemed enthusiastic. "This could really be something," he'd said, clapping me on the back. "We should develop this together. I can help with the technical specifications." I'd felt grateful for his support. Looking back now, I could see the warning signs I'd ignored. The way he always positioned himself between me and upper management. How he started presenting our work in meetings I wasn't invited to. But I'd trusted him. That was my mistake. The first theft had happened 6 months earlier, though I didn't realize it was theft at the time. I designed a new eco-friendly bottle cap that reduced plastic usage by 40% while maintaining seal integrity. It was a small project, just something I was testing on the side. I'd shown Trent my initial prototypes during lunch. He'd seemed impressed, asking detailed questions about the threading mechanism and material composition. I'd been happy to share. That's what teammates did, right? 2 weeks later, I'd walked past the executive conference room and saw Trent presenting my bottle cap design to the VP of Product Development. Through the glass wall, I watched him gesture at my drawings, now formatted in his presentation template. "This is what innovation looks like," I heard him saying as I stood frozen in the hallway. Rethinking the basics. When he came out, he'd seen me waiting. "Oh, Grace. I presented your cap idea to the VP. I gave you credit, of course. But I had to frame it properly for the business case. You understand." I nodded, uncertain. Later, when the project got approved, all the internal emails referred to it as Trent's Bottle Cap Initiative. I told myself it didn't matter. The work itself was what counted. Now I understood. It was never about the work. It was about who got the credit. The undermining had been subtle at first. So subtle I'd thought I was imagining it. In team meetings, Trent would interrupt me mid-sentence. "Let me clarify what Grace is trying to say," he'd begin, then proceed to explain my own idea in simpler terms, as if I couldn't articulate my own thoughts. He'd publicly correct me on small details that didn't matter. "Actually, Grace, the prototype was tested at 72 degrees, not 75. Details matter. The temperature difference was irrelevant to the results, but it made me look careless. When I suggested new approaches, he'd shoot them down immediately. I appreciate Grace's creativity, but let's focus on realistic solutions." Then, 2 weeks later, he'd present the same idea as his own refinement of the discussion. My confidence started eroding. I second-guessed everything I said. I rehearsed simple comments before meetings. I felt my voice getting smaller, more hesitant. Jenna had noticed. "He's gaslighting you," she'd whispered once after a particularly brutal meeting. "You know that, right?" But what could I do? Trent was senior. He was respected. I was just trying to keep my head above water. The late nights were the hardest to remember without feeling angry. While Trent left promptly at 5:30 every day, I stayed until 9 or 10, finishing the work that had both our names on it. I'd be there alone in the dark office, the cleaning crew working around me, while I ran simulations and refined calculations. I'd perfect the technical drawings, catch the errors in the code. I'd compile the data that made our project successful. Then Trent would arrive fresh at 9 the next morning, pick up my completed work, and take it straight to executive meetings I wasn't invited to. "Great job on the Henderson project," my supervisor had told Trent once, while I stood right there. I'd worked 70 hours that week on Henderson. Trent had contributed one email. Team effort, Trent had said generously, glancing at me. Grace helped with some of the detail work. Detail work. That's what he called my 70 hours. I'd started keeping my own records after that. Time logs, file timestamps, email chains. I wasn't sure why I was documenting everything. Some instinct told me I might need proof someday. That instinct had been right. I didn't know about Jenna's recording until weeks after it happened. She'd pulled me aside in the parking lot one evening, looking nervous. I need to show you something, she'd said, holding up her phone. I recorded the leadership meeting last Tuesday. The one you weren't invited to. She pressed play. I heard Trent's voice clearly through the speaker. Look, I appreciate Grace's enthusiasm, but she's too emotionally invested in these eco-projects. It's like a tree-hugger obsession. She can't see the business side. That's why I have to supervise everything she does now. Laughter from others in the room. Then my supervisor's voice. So you're saying she's not ready for more responsibility? Not yet. Maybe never. Some people are better as supporting players. Grace does good detail work when someone guides her properly. The recording ended. I stood there in the parking lot, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. I'm sorry, Jenna said. I thought you should know what he's saying behind your back. I'd thanked her, but inside something had broken. Or maybe something had finally crystallized into clarity. The breaking point came 3 days before the Green Earth presentation. I'd been working late, as usual, and had left my desk briefly to get water. When I came back, I heard voices from the HR office nearby. Trent's voice carried clearly through the half-open door. I'm just concerned about Grace's stability. She's become very defensive lately. Very emotional. I don't think she can handle leadership positions. She takes criticism too personally. Patricia's response was quieter, but I caught the important part. Should we be documenting this? Creating a paper trail? I think that would be wise, Trent replied. For everyone's protection. I'd stood frozen in the hallway, a paper cup of water trembling in my hand. They were building a case against me, painting me as unstable, emotional, unfit for advancement. All while Trent systematically took credit for my work. That night I'd made a decision. After the Green Earth presentation, the one I'd worked so hard on, I would quit. I'd leave Viridian and find somewhere that actually valued my contributions. The irony was that Trent had destroyed my prototype before I could leave on my own terms. But maybe that was better. Maybe I needed that final push. The truth about the sabotage came from an unexpected source. Carlos, the maintenance tech who serviced our 3D printers, caught me in the hallway the day after the disaster. Hey, Grace, he said quietly, looking around to make sure no one was listening. I need to tell you something about your prototype. We stepped into an empty conference room. Carlos pulled out his tablet and showed me the printer logs from the day before the Green Earth meeting. Someone changed the printer settings that night. See here. The material temperature was increased by 40 degrees, and the structural support density was reduced by 30%. That would make anything printed on that machine brittle. Basically guaranteed to break. My heart started pounding. Who changed it? Carlos pulled up the access log. Trent Hollis. Logged in at 7:45 p.m., 3 hours after you finished the print. There it was. Proof of deliberate sabotage. Trent had weakened my prototype so it would fail exactly when I needed it most. Why are you telling me this? He asked. Carlos shrugged. Because it's not right. I've seen him do stuff like this before. Small things. Changing people's file permissions. Accidentally corrupting data. He's careful but not careful enough. I hugged Carlos. Thank you. Now I had proof. But what could I do with it? Patricia called me into her office the next morning. I'd been hoping to show her Carlos's evidence, but she didn't give me a chance to speak. Grace, I've been asked by senior management to have you apologize to the team. The failed presentation has created tension in the department. We think a public apology would help everyone move forward. I stared at her. You want me to apologize? For Trent sabotaging my work? Grace, we've discussed this. It was an accident. Your continued insistence that Trent did something wrong is creating a hostile work environment. She slid a piece of paper across her desk. I've drafted an apology statement for you to read at tomorrow's team meeting. I picked up the paper and read it. The words made me sick. Taking responsibility for poor preparation. Acknowledging that my design was flawed. Thanking Trent for his honest feedback. I'm not reading this, I said, setting it down. Patricia's expression hardened. Then I'll have to document your refusal to cooperate with HR directives. That will go in your permanent file. Do what you need to do, I replied. But I won't apologize for being sabotaged. I walked out of her office with my head high, even though my hands were shaking. My phone rang that afternoon. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Grace. This is Elliot Barnes from Green Earth. We met at Viridian earlier this week. My breath caught. The business card. I'd forgotten about it in the chaos of everything else. Mr. Barnes. Yes, I remember. I was wondering if you'd be available to meet. Somewhere private. There's something I'd like to discuss with you about your prototype. We arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop across town. I spent the rest of the afternoon wondering what he wanted. Part of me worried it was bad news. Maybe Green Earth was considering legal action over the failed presentation. But there'd been something in his eyes when he handed me that card. Something that felt like understanding, not judgment. I pulled his business card from my wallet and studied it. Senior Vice President of Innovation. What did he want with me? Tomorrow I'd find out. The coffee shop was quiet on a Wednesday afternoon. I spotted Elliot at a corner table. 2 cups of coffee already waiting. He stood when he saw me, shaking my hand warmly. Thank you for meeting me, he said as we sat down. I imagine this has been a difficult week. That's one way to put it. Elliot smiled sympathetically. I want to be direct with you, Grace. I've been tracking Viridian's projects for about a year now. Specifically, I've been watching your work. My eyes widened. My work. The bottle cap redesign. The modified shipping containers. The water filtration prototype that never made it to production. All brilliant. All attributed to Trent Hollis in Viridian's marketing materials. But I did my research. Those were your designs. I didn't know what to say. Someone had actually noticed. What I saw at that presentation wasn't an accident, Elliot continued. I've been in this industry for 30 years. I know sabotage when I see it. And I know talent when I see it. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. This is what I'm proposing. Rebuild your prototype. On your own time with your own resources. When it's ready, present it directly to Green Earth. No Viridian. No Trent. Just you and your work. But I work for Viridian. They own my designs. Only designs created with company resources during company time. If you develop something independently, it's yours. He leaned forward. Grace, Green Earth needs innovative packaging solutions. You've already proven you can create them. The question is whether you're brave enough to bet on yourself. I looked down at the folder. Inside was a preliminary contract, contingent on me producing a working prototype within 90 days. I'd have to quit, I said quietly. Yes, you would. I thought about Trent. About Patricia and her forced apology. About watching my work get credited to someone else for the rest of my career. Okay, I said. I'll do it. I typed my resignation letter that night. Short and professional. No explanations, no accusations. Just a simple statement that I was leaving Viridian Industries effective immediately. I printed it out, signed it, and put it in an envelope addressed to Patricia. Then I sat at my kitchen table and cried. Not from sadness, but from relief and terror in equal measure. I was 32 years old, walking away from a stable job and a steady paycheck to build something in my garage. It was crazy. But staying at Viridian and watching Trent steal my future felt crazier. The next morning I arrived early and cleaned out my desk before anyone else showed up. I took only what belonged to me: personal files, my coffee mug, photos from my bulletin board. I left every Viridian document, every company pen, every piece of potential evidence that I'd stolen company property. I placed the resignation letter on Patricia's desk and walked out of the building at 7:45 a.m., before most of my coworkers had even arrived. My phone started ringing before I reached my car. Patricia. Then my supervisor. Then Trent. I ignored all of them. I had 90 days to rebuild my life. The clock was already ticking. My garage became my laboratory. I cleared out years of accumulated junk and set up a makeshift workspace with folding tables and borrowed equipment. My savings account, once earmarked for a down payment on a house, became my research and development fund. I started from scratch, using my original notes but improving on every aspect of the design. The prototype Trent destroyed had been good. This new version would be better, stronger, more elegant. The first week was the hardest. I'd wake up at 6 a.m., make coffee, and work until midnight. No coworkers. No meetings. No Trent interrupting my thoughts. Just me and the work. I used recycled materials from a local waste management facility for initial testing. The owner, impressed by my project, gave me access to their material streams for free. I tested dozens of composite ratios, finding the perfect balance between strength and biodegradability. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy. The woman who used to leave for work at 8 a.m. in business clothes now spent 14 hours a day in her garage wearing safety goggles and covered in dust. But slowly, the new prototype began to take shape. And it was beautiful. In my third week of independent work, I got stuck on a structural problem. The material kept failing at the stress points during compression testing. I'd solved this before at Viridian, but I couldn't remember exactly how. That's when I thought of Professor Vincent Reeves, my engineering instructor from college. He'd retired 5 years ago, but I'd heard he still maintained a small lab at the university for personal projects. I called him, half expecting him not to remember me. Instead, he answered on the second ring. Grace Williams. Course I remember you. You were one of the best students I ever taught. What are you working on? I explained my project, my situation, and my deadline. There was a long pause. Come to the university tomorrow morning. Bring your prototypes. Let's see what we can figure out. Professor Reeves's lab was a cluttered wonderland of half-finished projects and vintage equipment. He took one look at my compression test results and immediately identified the problem. Your fiber alignment is inconsistent. See here. You need to adjust your mixing process to create directional strength. We spent 6 hours that day working through the solution. By the time I left, my prototype could handle 3 times the pressure without failing. I don't know how to thank you, I told him. Watching talented people succeed is all the thanks I need, he replied. Come back anytime. My lab is your lab. Word traveled fast in the engineering community. By week 4 of my independent work, rumors started circulating that I'd stolen proprietary information from Viridian. I started getting emails from former coworkers asking if it was true. Had I really taken company files when I left? Was I really using Viridian's research to build a competing product? Trent was behind it, of course. I recognized his strategy. Destroy my reputation before I could succeed. I didn't respond to the rumors or defend myself publicly. Instead, I quietly gathered proof. I compiled every file timestamp from my personal laptop, showing that my initial designs predated my work at Viridian. I documented my material purchases, my independent research, and my development timeline. I also reached out to the patent attorney Professor Reeves recommended. She reviewed everything and confirmed what Elliot had told me. My current work was completely independent and legally mine. Keep these records safe, she advised. You're going to need them. She was right. 1 week later, I received a cease and desist letter from Viridian's legal department, claiming I'd stolen trade secrets. My attorney responded with a detailed timeline proving I'd created everything independently. We didn't hear back from Viridian after that. But the damage to my reputation had been done. People I'd respected for years now looked at me with suspicion. Kept working. It was all I could do. Day 87. 3 days before my deadline. I stood in Professor Reeves's lab holding my completed prototype. It was perfect. Stronger than the original. More aesthetically refined. And fully documented with independent research and testing data that would survive any legal challenge. "You did it," Professor Reeves said, examining the prototype with obvious pride. "This is remarkable work, Grace." That afternoon I called Elliot Barnes and scheduled my presentation to Green Earth for day 90. Exactly on deadline. I spent the next 2 days preparing. This time, there would be no Trent to accidentally destroy my work. No co-workers whispering behind my back. No HR department ready to blame me for presentation mishaps. Just me, my prototype, and the chance to prove what I could do. The morning of the presentation, I dressed carefully in my best suit. I packed my prototype in a secure case. I reviewed my notes one final time. Then I drove to Green Earth's headquarters with my heart pounding and my hands steady. The Green Earth conference room was nothing like Viridian's sterile meeting spaces. Large windows overlooked a green courtyard. The table was made from reclaimed wood. Everything about the space said that this company took sustainability seriously. Elliot was there along with 3 other executives. They greeted me warmly, without the skepticism I'd grown used to at Viridian. "Show us what you've built," Elliot said simply. I opened my case and carefully placed the prototype on the table. Then I walked them through every aspect of the design. The material composition, the compression strength, the biodegradability timeline, the manufacturing cost analysis. I demonstrated how it could handle weight without breaking, how it could be shaped into various configurations, how it dissolved completely in industrial composting conditions within 45 days. When I finished, there was silence. Then one of the executives, a woman named Dr. Helena Cross, leaned forward. "This is exactly what we've been looking for. The question is scale. Can this be manufactured at volume?" "Yes," I replied confidently. "I've designed the process to be compatible with existing manufacturing equipment. The learning curve would be minimal." Elliot and Dr. Cross exchanged glances. "We'd like to move forward," Elliot said. "With a full due diligence process, of course. We need to ensure there are no conflicts with your former employer." I expected that. I have complete documentation of my independent development process. They smiled. We spent the next hour discussing contract terms, production timelines, and partnership structures. By the time I left Green Earth that afternoon, I had a signed letter of intent and a deal that would change my life. The due diligence process began 2 weeks later. Green Earth's legal team was thorough, reviewing every aspect of my prototype's development and my employment history at Viridian. That's when things got interesting. During their review of Viridian's internal communications, Green Earth's attorneys discovered something unexpected. A series of emails between Trent and upper management discussing how to handle product failures that had occurred over the past 2 years. Failures that Trent had blamed on other engineers. Problems he'd covered up by destroying evidence and manipulating test results. A pattern of sabotage and deception that went far beyond what he'd done to me. "This is bigger than we thought," Elliot told me during a call. "We're finding evidence that several of Viridian's recent product launches had known defects that Trent deliberately concealed. This could have serious liability implications for any companies using Viridian products." Felt cold. "Are you saying people could have been hurt?" "Potentially, yes. They're waterproof containers that failed during shipping. Trent knew about the seal problems before launch but pushed them through anyway. He blamed the failures on manufacturing errors and got 3 engineers fired to cover it up. The due diligence wasn't just about protecting Green Earth anymore. It was about exposing systematic corporate misconduct. Within a month, the story broke. A major industry publication ran an exposé on Viridian Industries, detailing Trent's pattern of sabotage, the executive cover-ups, and the defective products that had been sold to unsuspecting clients. Several major companies announced they were suspending their contracts with Viridian pending investigation. The stock price plummeted. And suddenly, everyone who'd believed Trent's version of events was looking at what happened to me in a very different light. Jenna called me crying. "I'm so sorry I didn't stand up for you. I was scared of Trent, but that's no excuse. You tried to warn us." Other former co-workers reached out with similar apologies. They'd watched Trent undermine people for years but convinced themselves it wasn't their problem. Now they understood that staying silent had made them complicit. The lawsuits started piling up. Companies that had suffered losses due to defective Viridian products. Engineers who'd been fired under false pretenses. Even shareholders claiming leadership had knowingly concealed product problems. Viridian Industries, once a respected name in sustainable packaging, was collapsing under the weight of its own corruption. And I was free of it all, building something new. The call came on a Tuesday morning. Viridian's new CEO, brought in to clean up the mess, wanted to meet with me. "They're offering you a consulting position," my attorney explained. "Basically asking you to come back and fix their reputation." I almost laughed. The company that had pushed me out now wanted me to save them. I agreed to meet, mostly out of curiosity. The new CEO, a serious woman named Victoria Strand, didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Ms. Williams, Viridian Industries is facing an existential crisis. We need innovation, credibility, and someone who represents the values we claim to uphold. We'd like to hire you as our Chief Innovation Officer." "I have a contract with Green Earth," I replied. "We're prepared to wait until that contract concludes. And we're offering triple your previous salary, plus equity and full creative control over the innovation department." It was a generous offer. A chance to return in triumph to the place that had tried to break me. But I'd learned something important over the past months. Some places don't deserve your second chance. "I appreciate the offer," I said. "But I'm not interested in returning to Viridian in any capacity." Victoria looked surprised. People didn't usually turn down offers like this. "My work speaks for itself now," I continued. "I don't need Viridian's name to validate it anymore." Trent's termination made the industry news. Fired for cause, with Viridian pursuing legal action to recover damages from his misconduct. His professional reputation was destroyed. Companies throughout the industry quietly blacklisted him. I heard through former co-workers that he'd been desperately trying to find new employment, but nobody would hire him. His LinkedIn profile, once full of accomplishments stolen from others, now sat dormant and unnoticed. Part of me felt satisfaction at his downfall, but mostly I felt relief. Relief that he couldn't hurt anyone else the way he'd hurt me. Relief that his pattern of sabotage had finally caught up with him. Patricia from HR was let go too, along with several executives who'd enabled Trent's behavior. Viridian's board was conducting a complete restructuring, trying to salvage what remained of the company's credibility. I didn't celebrate their misfortune. I was too busy building my future to dwell on their past. But I won't lie. There was a certain poetic justice in watching the people who dismissed my concerns face consequences for their choices. 6 months after that disastrous presentation, I stood in a sleek conference room addressing a group of investors. Behind me, displayed on a large screen, was my completed design, the same biodegradable packaging system that Trent had destroyed on that table at Viridian. Except this time it had my name on it, my company's logo, my terms. I'd founded Grace Williams Sustainable Solutions with Green Earth as my anchor client and Professor Reeves as my chief technical advisor. We'd already signed contracts with 3 major corporations looking to transition away from traditional packaging. Elliot Barnes sat in the front row, smiling proudly. He'd taken a chance on me when I had nothing but broken fragments and determination. Now he was watching that bet pay off. "The interesting thing about failure," I said, concluding my presentation, "is that it teaches you what success actually looks like. When my prototype was destroyed, I thought my career was over. Instead, it was just beginning." I held up my completed design, the one that had survived sabotage, skepticism, and every obstacle that had been thrown in my path. Funny thing about trying to destroy someone's work, I said, meeting the eyes of every investor in the room. It just gives them a reason to rebuild it better. The room erupted in applause. My company was officially funded, my design was going into production, and I was finally in control of my own future. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be exactly what you needed.